Hey guys, Chris from Drift Outfitters here, and I'm going to show you how to tie a really simple boobie pattern. For those unfamiliar, a boobie is a stillwater fly originated in the UK, absolutely deadly on pretty well any stillwater that you'll ever come across. Wild, stocked fish, doesn't really seem to matter all that much. Can be tied in a really wide range of different styles, but this is probably the most basic sort of style involving a marabou wing and tail. And to start off, all I'm going to do, this is a short shank hook. This is a Hanak 260 number 8. You can tie this larger, smaller if you want, but it's a short shank, and that's typically what I prefer for these kinds of flies. I'm going to start it. This is a 10-aught Veevus in orange at the eye here. Just going to start it off and take wraps rearward toward the bend. Snip off the excess here. Now I like to start off these flies with the tail, and for that, as I mentioned, we're just going to use some marabou. In this case, I'm going to use some olive marabou, sort of golden olive marabou like so. And what I like to do is just come in on the side here and tear off a section of fibers, like so. And I like to look for, if they aren't very, how I describe them, fluffy fibers. Like I like to see the material look like this back here. I want a very full profile. I don't like these very fine tips, even though they do move very well. They don't give this fly enough body in my mind. So I like to come in, and assuming those fluffier sort of sections of the fibers don't extend all the way to the tips, I come in here and I will just rip those, just make them square, like so. I measure it up to be in around a shank length. Clean that up a little bit more. All right, there we go. So shank length, maybe a tad longer if anything. Just tying that in off the bend here. Like so. And you don't have to use a tail at all if you don't want. You can certainly use different materials if you want, but this seems to be a good one. It works quite nicely. So I just loosely sort of catch those fibers and bind them down to the hook. And then from here, what I'll do is I'll take my eyes, and these are, as you'll see, where the name Boobie comes from. This is a foam cut dowel for this purpose. It's a closed cell foam, pretty dense, relatively buoyant. And this is quite long. I usually aim for getting 2 out of every one of these, so I just cut it right in half. And even then, I'm not going to use the full length. That's a little too long. I'm going to cut this a little shorter, and you just have to kind of use your eye for this, see how short you want. Call that about 1.5 centimeters or so, and for size reference, this is a 5mm diameter dowel here that I'm using. Now, I don't know that actually makes a difference in terms of how they fish, but these flies certainly look better when these edges are rounded. And the easiest way to do that is just sort of take your scissors, and you're not trying to cut a whole lot off, but just cutting that sharp edge off, just to round it out slightly. Just makes the fly look a little cleaner. Once you have the eye prepped, like so, this is the best way I've found to mount them. This is a technique from Dave Downey. It's an awesome tire. If you haven't checked him out, definitely do. All I do, place it along the shank, eyeball the center line of the eyes, take a wrap right over the top of these, and I lift them up off of the shank and continue that wrap all the way around in the same line, and cinch down so that the eyes are actually pinched onto your thread like so, about on the center line. Then just take wraps over top of that hook until they meet the shank, and then you can kind of rotate them into place. At this point, take wraps one way, then the other, a few times until they're relatively secure there. And when you tie the eyes in is sort of up to you. I like to do them at this stage in the fly. Some people will tie the entire fly and then add these at the end. Neither way is wrong. Whatever works for you is what you want to do. So that's what it looks like, and you can see where the name of the fly comes from now. For the rest of the fly, it's a very simple tie. All I'm going to do is take, first, this is some large pearl tinsel. I'm just going to catch that in alongside the body. Bring my thread back up to the eyes. Start wrapping that tinsel now over top the body. Again, you could mix up the materials. You could use a small chenille here. You could use dubbing. Lots of different options. So I've covered up that body. This gives a nice little kind of glint, this fly. Just tie that off immediately behind the eyes here. And clip off the excess. Oops. There we go. And then for the wing, we're just going to use some more Marabou. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did for the tail and just rip off some fibers from the side of a plume here. Like so, a little denser, probably twice as dense as the tail. Again, sort of just square up the tips. Like so. And now I want this tail, or sorry, the wing, to roughly match the length of the tail in total, so they're sort of square off the bat here. So I'm just going to roughly measure out the length there, trim them to length, put them right on top, right, try and turn this to show you, right in the middle of the eyes, and then let my thread carry them down sort of into the gap between the eyes and the shank itself. You can see his butt ends are just barely still exposed. Take some wraps over there to tidy that up a little. Bring my thread back in front of the eyes now. And you can do all sorts of things. You can add flash to this wing if you want. You could add some dubbing in around the eyes if you want to tidy up the exposed thread wraps, because there are some. If you look on the underside here, there are exposed thread wraps. It does not affect how the fly fishes, and I don't think that they're vulnerable enough to really be affected by fish's teeth, but if it makes you feel better, you can certainly tidy that up. This is a deadly, deadly fly. This is a very simple color combination. The olive is good. Black works very well too. Mix it up to your liking there, play around with it, catch some fish.